And welcome to Big Time Basketball. Thanks so much for logging on. Alongside Chris Hagan, I'm Chris Woodlick. Our tour around the Big Ten this week starts at the top. Michigan State still sits at the best position in the conference, but once unbeaten Sparty rolled into West Lafayette and was unceremoniously swatted away by Purdue last Sunday, Chris.
Yeah, the Boilermakers with a long history of upsets in Mackey Arena, and WXIN's Dave Griffiths was there for this one.
In a prove-it week for Purdue, the Boilers made us believe they can battle and even beat the best teams in the Big Ten. The Golden Blacks started on the road in Ann Arbor against top 20 Michigan, took them to double overtime but couldn't quite complete that upset. The turnaround brought Purdue home to Mackey Arena for a date with Michigan State. Top 10, undefeated in the Big Ten, but not after Sunday. The Boilers shot out of the gates against Sparty, led by 17 at the half, and never let up. A 29-point win, 71-42. Everything was clicking. Offense shot 46% from the field. Defense forced All-American Cassius Winston into 9 turnovers. Purdue's potential was fully on display.
These are one of the tougher teams in our league, and just to come out and get a win like that, it means a lot for me, but also, most importantly, it's for our team. It's a tone setter from here on out.
The game in Illinois has to be an outlier for us. That can't rear its ugly head again. And as a coach, that's a lot of times you worry more through success than you do through failure. When you have that game in Illinois, if you don't respond, then you go to Michigan, you got some real trouble. Because if guys from a competitive standpoint can't fight after that. But I don't know how you can't fight in any game, no matter what the circumstances are. So we just got to kind of keep building our fight.
Purdue is now in the middle of a 5-day stretch between games, their longest such stretch in conference play. Head coach Matt Painter told me that is an ideal situation for center Matt Holmes, who's still trying to get back to 100% health after injuring his hip against Michigan. Covering Purdue, I'm Dave Griffiths.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Here's a look at that shocking final, and covering MSU's side of this one was WLNS's Audrey Dahlgren.
Tom Izzo will tell you weeks like this, where Michigan State only has one game, are his absolute favorite because he gets to put his 15th ranked Spartans through 3 solid days of practice, and it couldn't have come at a better time. Sunday's loss to Purdue was a historic one. MSU's 42 points were its fewest since January of 2012, and the Boilermakers shut Cassius Winston down. He only had 10 points. That's a problem in Izzo's eyes. He mentioned this week how he needs more consistency out of his big 3, which of course includes Winston.
I just got out of an hour meeting with Cash and went through every ounce of that film to show him that he is such an unselfish kid, and yet it looked selfish in that game a little bit but it was because everybody else was standing around. And I still remember the first year or 2 I got here, Magic gave that great line that I've used for 25, 24 years, Great players play great, but elite players make other players play great.
As you just heard, the Spartans are trying to make sense of their first loss in more than a month, and their goal now is to try to fix the issues rather than fixate on them. And they'll get the opportunity to do just that on Friday against Wisconsin at home. Covering Michigan State, I'm Audrey Dahlgren.
All right, thanks, Audrey. And along with Sparty, Wisconsin has been one of the standard bearers for the Big Ten in recent years, with conference titles and deep runs in the Big Dance, including a couple of Final Four appearances.
Can always count on Wisconsin being up there. This year, the Badgers may be headed in that direction again. Wisconsin near the top of the league, but Bucky faced a big test against Maryland. For more on the week that was, here's Burke Griffin of WFRV.
Well, it was quite the week for the Badgers, and for the first time in 4 years, Wisconsin won 3 straight games against ranked opponents. And it looks like they have totally turned their season around by not only getting above 500 in Big Ten play, but they're making big-time plays during crunch time. Case in point, Tuesday night against 14th-ranked Maryland, and down by 1 with 12 seconds to go, Brad Davison not only slapped the inbounds pass off the Terrapins player to get the ball back, the sharpshooter came off a screen in the corner, and he hit a go-ahead 3 to give Wisconsin a dramatic 56-54 victory.
You win there, especially in this league. Take every win you can get. Wasn't always pretty, but we always say gritty, not pretty, so we'll take that one. Big game.
And the Badgers host Nebraska, and then they are on the road against Purdue next week. For Big Time Basketball, I'm Burke Griffin.
Thank you so much, Burke. I love the enthusiasm. There's the final. Key victory for the Badgers by 2 over the Terps to put themselves back in the championship mix. For Maryland's take, here's Alif Kareem.
In their last outing, the Maryland Terrapins dropped their second consecutive game and fourth road game to Wisconsin. 2 misses in their final 2 possessions, and a determined Bratz Davidson put the Badgers over the Terps in a tight contest. Jalen Smith, Anthony Cowan, and Andrew Wiggins were all in double-digit figures for Maryland, but the other 6 players who got to see the court only combined for 7 total points. This loss also meant that the Terps have yet to win a road game at all this season, sitting with a 13-4 record in the year so far. And improving on that record doesn't get any easier. While the Terps are undefeated at home, that could change when Purdue enters College Park this Saturday. The Boilermakers just handed the top team in the Big Ten, Michigan State, their first conference loss, and emphatically at that too, beating them by 29 points last Sunday. Covering Maryland, I'm Alif Kareem.
Thank you, Alif. And one team really tough to figure out, the Ohio State Buckeyes. A roller coaster week for OSU. Last Saturday, upset at the hands of Indiana and Bloomington, marking OSU's 4th loss in a row.
One good way to stop the bleeding, how about a home date against Nebraska? The Buckeyes with a much-needed 80-68 win over the Huskers. For more on the victory, here's WCMH-TV's Jared Smalley.
Well, Chris Holtmann is in his 3rd year at Ohio State, and he's already shown a willingness to sit his best players if he thinks it's the best for his team. Well, a year ago, he did that for Caleb Wesson. He suspended Wesson for several critical games at the end of the year, a disciplinary move. That appears to be what Holtmann decided to do this week with 2 sophomore guards, Luther Muhammad and Dwayne Washington, both suspended for Tuesday night's Buckeye win over Nebraska. The Bucks had dropped 4 straight games. Both Muhammad and Washington had struggled through the past few weeks. Their teammates stepped up in their absence in an 80-68 win. Holtmann says those suspensions are intended to change behavior.
I'm not ever coaching just to win one game or put our best team on the floor for one game. They're more important to me than that, and it's more important to me than that.
It's a message. Like you said, it's just letting guys know what's tolerable, what's not.
The Buckeyes shot better than 54% from the field Tuesday night, a significant improvement over recent weeks. They'll try to build on that Saturday at Penn State. The Buckeyes routed the Nittany Lions earlier this season in Columbus. It is unclear whether Muhammad and Washington will be available for that game in Happy Valley. For Big Time Basketball in Columbus, I'm Jared Smalley.
Thanks, Jared. Smooth transition as always. Now here's a look at that final. Ohio State 80-68 in the much-needed win. As for the Cornhuskers, let's check in with them and our Jacob Russo.
The Nebraska Cornhuskers were looking to play giant killer again earlier this week. They were taking on a top 25 ranked Ohio State squad, and they were hoping they could make it 2 in a row over ranked opponents. But unfortunately for the Huskers, the Buckeyes weren't going to be like the Iowa of last week. Ohio State pounded the Huskers in the first half, going up 13 at the break, and Big Red just could not catch up in the second. Despite outscoring the Buckeyes in the second half, it just wasn't enough.
They made us pay early in the game by hitting those 3 threes, the back-to-back threes they hit before halftime to build the 13-point lead. That one Arns hit was huge. It gave them a lot of momentum going into the break up 13 as opposed to, maybe having that thing in single digits. There was key stretches in that game when Cam picked up his 4th. I think they went into 12-0 run very shortly after that to build the lead up to 25. I thought offensively in the first half of that game, the ball was not getting side to side.
So what's next for the Huskers? A showdown with the Indiana Hoosiers. There are no breaks in the Big Ten, so if Nebraska wants the W, they're going to have to bring their A game once again against a team that's averaging more than 76 points per game. That game will be on Saturday. Well, that's going to do it for our look into the Huskers. Covering Nebraska, I'm Jacob Russo.
Hey, Jacob, this time of year, it's all about stacking up the wins and not those losses, Chris. And the Iowa Hawkeyes getting streaky of late in a positive way. 2 win streaks this season of 4 games already, and they're working on another now.
Yeah, their latest victim, Northwestern. The Hawks knocking them off 75-62 over the struggling Cats. Iowa now 12-5. Nice numbers. For more on that, here's WHBF's Adam Rosso.
The up and down roller coaster season continues throughout college basketball, and the same can be said for the Iowa Hawkeyes. A week ago, they were down and out after 2 straight losses. Now the Hawks have evened their record at 3-3 in the conference. An upset win over Maryland and Iowa City last Friday, and a road victory on Tuesday at Northwestern doing the trick. Luka Garza continues to be a menace for Big Ten opponents. He leads the league in scoring. He's second in rebounding. The junior averaged 24 points and 8 rebounds this past week.
He's got a really good feel now of when and where the double team's coming from and how quickly to get rid of it or shoot it. Sometimes you can shoot it before the double team gets there. Sometimes you can't. But he's not turning it over. He's not spinning and charging and committing fouls. He's moving the ball, and sometimes we move it, and then we throw it back into him. And I think that's what you have to do. He's got to know that when he gives it up, he might get it back.
Michigan is next for Garza and the Hawkeyes on Friday. The big man dropped 44 on the Wolverines in their first meeting in December, the most for a Big Ten player in 25 years. Rutgers then comes to Carver Hawkeye Arena on Wednesday, the middle game in Iowa's 3-game homestand. Covering the Hawks for Big Time basketball, I'm Adam Rosso.
Adam, thank you very much. There's your final again. Hawkeyes 75, the Cats 62. And as Adam mentioned, Luke Garza continues his rise. A huge night, 27 points in that Hawkeye victory. For the Cats' perspective, this week is WGN's Josh Friedman.
Playing its fourth game in 10 days, Northwestern ran out of gas Tuesday night hosting Iowa as the Hawkeyes' 6-point halftime lead turned into a 13-point blowout victory.
I was really proud of our guys' effort. I thought we hit the wall a little bit emotionally and physically. This was our fourth game in 10 days and only having 8 guys available. And, it's been a really tough stretch with Minnesota, Indiana, Nebraska, and now Iowa in a 10-day span. And I thought in the second half we were gassed. And we tried to take a couple timeouts, and we were hanging around. It was at 6. It was kind of at 7. But we could never really kind of find, the energy and the fight that's needed to beat a team like Iowa.
Iowa is a great team, and I think they, were really ready in the second half, and they had a really good game plan. Obviously, with Garza as a great player, and I think they hit us with a couple punches where we were hanging around in there, but I think they just, had a little more left in the tank than us right when it was a crucial point in time.
The Wildcats' loss drops them to 1-5 in the Big Ten. Last in the conference, they'll head south to Champaign to take on 24th-ranked Illinois on Saturday. Covering Northwestern, I'm Josh Friedman.
Well, thanks, Josh. In Bloomington, another up-and-down week for those Indiana Hoosiers. A huge win over a ranked Ohio State squad Saturday tipped things off.
Yeah, but IU having troubles on the road. Such was the case again Wednesday night in New Jersey. And give it up for Rutgers. The Scarlet Knights undefeated at home this season, and they took this one 59-50.
This league is all about taking punches. So 12 teams in the top 35, I think it is, and it's a gauntlet. So we took their a good punch. We knew they would, and we responded well. And then we took another punch, and we stayed in the ring. So guys are getting better at responding to runs of the team. So it was good feeling. But again, I think guys all chipped in, and guys were all locked in today.
Yeah, Rutgers throwing a lot of big punches this season already. They're 13-4 on the year. IU also 13-4 with the loss for IU coach Archie Miller. Still in some need of consistency on the road.
We have a chance, I think, if we're at our best and we're maxing out our stuff, I think this team has a chance to be a really good team, especially as we continue to prove defensively. And as the season goes, you keep working through your offensive kinks. In this league, it just becomes such a slugfest. You need a jolt of energy. We got a good jolt of energy. Now you got to have some humility and figure a way out to go on the road. We just got to keep raising our level of intensity, and we got to stay with it. And I think this team has a chance. We got a great group.
Yeah, Indiana with a couple of young stars in the paint this season, but waiting for some help on the perimeter.
Yeah, that's their Achilles heel this year, and the Hoosiers may have found it for next season with a homegrown talent right there in Bloomington. WTTV's JoJo Gentry with the story of a big-time prospect from Hoosierland.
Arrogant, out of control, troublemaker, no.
That's how the winningest coach in Indiana high school basketball history jokes about his star player. But truth be told, Bloomington South head coach J.R. Holmes thinks highly of his senior standout.
Well-rounded in a lot of different areas. His growth has been good, and physically his growth has been good in maturing. We've still got to go ways to go. He's not at the top yet, but we're working on that.
Anthony averaged 20 points a game last season, and as a straight-A student, he had several offers. But Anthony committed to the Hoosiers, and with his parents working for the university's foundation, he actually says he wouldn't mind running into them on campus.
I wouldn't be surprised if we do, but they're going to let me live, the college life, and it's going to be pretty busy being an athlete. But they're just really happy to be able to support me however they can.
And playing for head coach Archie Miller was a selling point for Anthony as well.
I think that he really knows what he's doing, and he's being, really good in the way that he's doing it, and just trusting his process and getting his guys recruited and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really, buying into what him and his staff are trying to do.
Anthony actually isn't the first in his family to be a star basketball player here at Bloomington South High School. His older sister Lauren, who's 2 years older, has pushed him to be where he is now.
She's the reason I like basketball. I love basketball. She's the reason I play, and she just got through a few injuries.
Lauren plays basketball at DePaul and Greencastle. She's torn and rehabbed both ACLs and had surgery Monday to repair a torn meniscus. Anthony says her playing career could be over.
Just seeing her passion be taken away from her has kind of increased my love for the game and my appreciation for it, and it just makes sure that every time I'm out here, I'm trying to give it all I can, because I never know when that's going to be ending. I wear her number because she wore 3, so she's everything. She's my best friend.
I mean, she's really stayed in there as a fighter, and I think that shows Anthony that he has to be a fighter too.
And Anthony will have to be if he expects to excel in a competitive conference like the Big Ten.
Anthony, who could you guard out there? I mean, those were men beating on men. I mean, they're so physical. And I can guard any of them.
Reporting from Bloomington, Indiana, I'm JoJo Gentry.
JoJo, thank you. Now, Leo's got a good head on his shoulders. He picked the Hoosiers over Stanford, so kid's got some smarts. In Minneapolis, expectations running high for the Golden Gophers this season. Minnesota's starting to get it all figured out as the conference schedule gets into full swing.
Yeah, that was on display against Penn State, a ranked squad. Already had 12 wins on the resume, but the Gophers get it. 75-69 in comeback fashion. A big win for head coach Richard Pitino's squad. Daniel Oturu's 12th double-double of the season with 26 points and 14 rebounds was key. Marcus Carr added 27. Minnesota got the W, but as far as Penn State's concerned, here's Peter Terpstra.
Penn State basketball really started off the season hot, making the AP Top 25 for the first time since the mid-90s, but then they got cold, and entering this week, they had lost back-to-back games, and then it turns out Minneapolis is not really a good place to warm up, single-digit weather and all. So Penn State went out to Minnesota on Wednesday night, and the first half was pretty strong. When you can't get the ball over and over to Lamar Stevens or Big Mike Watkins, someone has to step up, and that person was Seth Lundy. Lundy had 13 first-half points. That's good enough already for a career high for him. He finished with 15, so he only scored 2 points in the second half, and that was kind of a theme for Penn State. They had a tough going in the second half as Minnesota went on a big run and ended up closing out Penn State 75-69, and the Nittany Lions take their 3rd loss in a row and their 5th loss overall on the season. So here we are on a bit of a losing streak here in Happy Valley. Next up, Penn State's going to welcome Ohio State in here. Those two teams already played earlier this season, and Ohio State just kicked the corn out of the Nittany Lions by 32 points. We'll see how Saturday goes, a noon Eastern tip. And that's your look at Penn State basketball. We'll check in with you this next week.
Peter, thank you very much. Some big-time matchups tipped tonight in league play. Wisconsin faces Michigan State at Breslin Center. That one goes off at 7 o'clock Eastern in East Lansing, while the Michigan Wolverines visit Carver Hawkeye Arena in Iowa at 9 o'clock. An outstanding doubleheader. For more on the Wolverines, here's Wood TV's Jack Doles.
If Michigan is to even up its record in the Big Ten, it'll have to do something it hasn't done this year. Win a true road game. The Wolverines are 0-4 this season, playing on opponents' home floors. Tonight, they're in Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes. These two teams played previously way back in early December. Michigan dropped 106 points on the Hawkeyes. But again, the Maize and Blue did that with their leading scorer, Isaiah Livers. And it sounds like Livers is likely to miss his 5th consecutive game, nursing a groin injury.
We know no one's feeling sorry for us. Because we are losing one of our best players these last few games, and we lost games without him. at the end of the day, we got to keep fighting and keep plugging. And we have a very confident group that's all about finding solutions.
Michigan is certainly going to need a solution for this guy, Iowa big man Luka Garza. He torched the Wolverines in the first game, scoring 44 points. Howard calls the 6'11 center one of the best big men in the game. So you can imagine who Michigan's defense will be keying on.
Garza, because he's touching the ball no matter what, every time down the floor. Very skillful, can go off of both shoulders, can shoot the ball from outside. He hasn't changed much.
Juwan Howard and the Wolverines really want this road win. Their next home game is next Wednesday against Penn State. Covering the Wolverines, I'm Jack Doles.
All right, thank you, Jack. Here's a list of Saturday's games. Ohio State at Penn State. Purdue on the road at number 17, Maryland. Northwestern at Illinois. And Indiana visits Nebraska. Among those keeping a close eye on that Battle of Illinois will be our Brett Behrens.
It's good to be an Illini these days. Illinois basketball enters the rankings for the first time this week, coming in at number 24 in the AP poll. It's the first time the program has been in the top 25 since December of 2014. On top of that, it's the first time Brad Underwood has ever had a ranked team as a head coach. The Illini did it by beating 3 top 30 ranked teams in the KenPom to start the new year. Illinois blew by Purdue by 26, won in Madison for the first time in a decade, and then took care of Rutgers in a barn burner last Saturday. The Illini haven't played since, giving the team a week off to recover before Northwestern comes to Champaign this Saturday. With so many games left in the regular season, Underwood says his team has in no way arrived, despite some national recognition.
That's exactly why it means nothing. We got 2/3 of the season left. I mean, we got 14 games. The next one that's on our schedule is going to be just as hard as this one. So we've given ourselves a fighting chance, but I don't look at standings.
This week break for the Illini won't happen again the rest of the season, and it only gets harder from here. After enjoying 3 of 4 at home, Illinois now hits the road with 3 of its next 4 away. Covering Illinois for Big Time Basketball, I'm Brett Behrens.
Brett, thank you. No doubt this means a lot that the Illini are ranked. Well, Sunday's game is an interesting one. Minnesota takes on Rutgers at the Rack in New Jersey. The Scarlet Knights still perfect at home this season as they push towards a rare berth in the NCAA tournament, somewhere they haven't been since 1991, Chris. That's a long time. Well, the Big Ten Conference is currently rated tops in the country, and with 5 ranked squads, it's pretty easy to see why.
Yeah, and one man who gets to see all of the teams up close and personal is Coley Harvey, who recently spent some time with WXIN's Dave Griffiths.
Well, Coley, if we're talking Big Ten, we'll start at the top of the standings. Michigan State, in spite of what happened on this floor to Purdue just this past Sunday, I mean, they're number 1 in the conference for a reason. They were a preseason number 1. What is it that sets this Michigan State team apart that makes it a contender in the Big Ten?
Well, I mean, they're obviously very well coached. It starts with Tom Izzo, and even Izzo saying after this game today, the buck's going to end with me. You know, I'm taking this hard because this is a game that we've got to win. These are teams that we've got to prepare for. And he didn't feel like he prepared his team well enough to execute today. That being said, this is still a team that's got Cassius Winston. Cassius Winston is one of the best players in the country, has been throughout the entire time that he's been at Michigan State. That's one of the reasons why they're going to contend. Xavier Tillman, once he kind of continues to settle into himself, he's going to be another reason why they contend. But at the same time, that all being said, this is still a Michigan State team that is vulnerable. We've seen that throughout this season. If they can just get hot at the right time, we've seen them get hot. If they can get hot at the right time, I think they've got a chance to do something good this year.
Perhaps every Big Ten team is a little bit vulnerable. I mean, we've seen Maryland lose to Iowa. We've seen Michigan lose to Illinois. Is that because the Big Ten is not as strong at the top, or is it perhaps because it's maybe a little bit deeper than we thought at the beginning of the year?
I think it's because it's deep. You know, I mean, they're basically just 2 teams that really aren't competing. Rutgers is a team that nobody saw coming, and Rutgers is playing very well, not just on the road even. They're playing very well at home. I mean, it's kind of a team that's a lot like Purdue, just maybe playing a little bit better on the road than the Boilermakers are. That all being said, yeah, it's not top heavy like it used to be. It used to just be the Michigan States, maybe the Illinois would sneak in years past, the Indianas, but you're seeing a little bit of everybody. You're seeing that diversity, and I think that's what's really making this conference show itself to be one of the most elite in the country. And I mean, I would not be surprised if we're going to see 7, maybe even 8 teams maybe sneak in, just the way that they're playing and the way that they're competing against other teams in the across the country this year.
We already dove into Michigan State. Is there any other team that you think could really be 1 or 2 contenders for the league title when the league year is said and done?
Yeah, you know, I think Ohio State is still a team that I want to believe in. Obviously, the Buckeyes have had some issues of late trying to sustain things in that regard, so it's hard to really put them in that conversation, but I think they could be there. Indiana's a team to watch out for. Penn State has had its moments throughout the year, and Rutgers, as I mentioned too, is another one to watch out for. Maryland. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, this has been a really solid conference the way they played so far this year.
That's Coley Harvey. Check him out on Big Ten Network all season long, also with Fox Sports. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks, Dave. Now, despite the loss at Purdue, Michigan State still alone at the top, followed closely by Illinois, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. Minnesota just a half game back of those three. And as always, Chris, that order is subject to change.
It's going to change. A lot of surprises up there. Well, that puts a wrap on this edition of Big Time Basketball. Thanks again for logging on. For Chris Hagan, I'm Chris Widlick. See you same time next week.